right, first of all, tomorrow is a Veterans Day, so I want to thank all the veterans in this room for their service. And today is the 242nd birthday of the Marine Corps, so happy birthday to the Marines. As we always do, we'll just kind of give you a brief update of what's going on. Not a whole lot has changed, but we are continuing to make progress on some of the various projects. You can see a lot of dirt has been moved at Cypress Park, so again, that's still supposed to open first part of March, I believe. So we're very hopeful of that. We continue to work on designs for Sarah Park. We had the opportunity yesterday. Oh, wow. I thought the big shiny light was taking me.
Go to the light.
Aliens do exist.
Yeah. We did have an opportunity to see some very preliminary plans for the downtown Catalyst project. They were, we're excited about everything that they're trying to do. It's they're going to probably move it a little bit around from what we thought, but it's all going to be well done. It's going to provide restaurant, shops, public spaces, and maybe the best thing, or the thing that we're the happiest about, is that the private development piece of it is overwhelming. I mean, people love the idea, they are willing to invest, and they're getting in line to do so. So and it's not only from the full-on developer. In other words, I'll build that building, but also his customers or her customers are also getting themselves on a list saying, and we want to locate a business there, a restaurant, a shop, whatever. So we're very, very excited, and again, we're hopeful we can get that project started this summer. Let's see what else. Havasu Riviera. They have begun grading the residential piece of it, and they're supposed to have their Army Corps of Engineer permit, if not by today, early next week, which then allows them to begin the launch ramp. And they have permission, as I said before, to work through December and January, which is somewhat unusual because of there's a fish that spawns during that period of time, and usually you can't do any work in the lake, but they are getting special permission to be able to do that. And it could be to some degree that the spawn don't fish in that particular area. I know that years ago when we wanted to dredge the channel, we had to stop in December because the fish were spawning, and so we couldn't touch the channel until I think the end of January. Then we could proceed again. So, so that project is moving along quite well, and I know Charlie has received a number of responses to the request for qualifications on the Eco-Environmental Center, and he's in the process, along with his teammates on that pillar, of narrowing those down so that they can select an architect to get moving on building the Eco-Environmental Center. And then finally, the co-location center, which is for entrepreneurs. As I've kind of briefly mentioned before, and it's pretty much a done deal at this point. The PED, who was going to be the ones that were going to manage that, and they still are, they were going to do it as part of the Downtown Catalyst project, probably up a couple stories where some office space would be, but that project is so desirable and such demand that the prices are probably too high for them now. And so they're going to find another location in the downtown area to build that. But that's a good thing. That really is a great thing for that project being able to move forward. Let's see, what am I forgetting?
That's about it?
That's it.
Let's go home.
And, finally, also, as everybody knows, Charlie's last day, that's what I want to talk about, is December 29th. In terms of finding a replacement, we are, the recruiter brought us somewhere in the neighborhood of 58 or so resumes. The recruiter narrowed those down to about a dozen. And the council right now is independently reviewing not only the resumes. Come on in. Hey, Greg. They're not only reviewing resumes, but we have videos. So we asked every candidate to go through a series of 3 questions. And so those are all being independently reviewed. And you might say, well, why are you independently reviewing them? Because we wanted every council member to assess every candidate without any other influence and give us the top 3 to 5. And then from there, the council will meet to determine who the finalists are, and we'll either have 3, 4, or 5 finalists. And then we will personally interview them, and we will ask quite a few stakeholders within the community to also I don't want to say interview, but meet them and give us their feedback on who would be best suited for the community. So it's a lengthy but thorough process, and we truly hope to have somebody on board, worst case into January, and we're hopeful sooner than that. So it's we've had quite a few good candidates, and so it's always difficult to try to narrow those down, but we're ready for that task, and we're confident.
It's nice to have the
I'm
luxury.
sorry, Mayor, I was a couple of minutes late. Did
Quite
you
all right.
talk about the basketball game yet?
I haven't. I'm still nursing the bruises.
I'm struggling with the video. I'm still willing to sell it back so that no one has to see it.
Okay, I'll talk about the basketball game. Anyway, so that's where we're at on the city manager, and we're really hopeful we'll have somebody on board pretty quickly. So what Jim was talking about is Telus has invited 2 basketball teams, one from Las Vegas and one from Phoenix, to compete in a wheelchair basketball game. These are, I guess for lack of a better word, professional wheelchair basketball players. And it clearly shows that just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't do anything you want to do. They embarrassed us thoroughly. At one point, it was 22-2. And they felt so bad, they loaned us one of their players. And then let us have 7 people on the court. So we only lost 65-22 or something. So yeah, we had a heck of a comeback. But it was really a lot of fun. I'm sure the crowd loved it. It's funny how the rules are similar to basketball, except that what it basically you do is, in terms of dribbling, you can put the ball in your lap and push your chair twice. Well, when we always think of it, okay, do that and go zoop, zoop. No. They put it there. They're halfway down the court. It's like, what? And then when they started making 3-pointers from the regular line, we knew they were showing off then. So it was amazing. No, I did not make any baskets. I threw one up. I hit the backboard, thankfully. And the other one, I think, hit the crowd. But other than that, crowd's okay. But it was fun. We had the police chief, the fire chief, members of our police department, members of the community. The lady that put it together, Amy Ulmer, she's a teacher at Telesis. She received years ago a 4-year scholarship at UNLV and actually tried out for the U.S. Olympic team. So the good news on that one is she didn't make any baskets either. So I figured I'm as good as somebody who tried out for the U.S. Olympic team. So, but it was fun, and I think they're going to try to do this again next year. But if they do it again next year, I would encourage you to go watch it because the talent on their teams is absolutely incredible. I mean, the precision in terms of passing, and they get in there with those wheelchairs too. Boy, you better watch your fingers if you got them here, because they crash into each other. You're not supposed to do it on purpose. Yeah, well,
Supposed to in NASCAR.
yeah, I didn't see too many fouls called, so I don't know. But yeah, it was fantastic, and everybody really enjoyed themselves. So we're hopeful we'll do it again. Yes, sir.
Now, Mark, were you in a wheelchair or were you upright?
It's funny that you asked that, because the quote I gave the paper is because I had to get in a wheelchair. For once in my life in basketball, I was going to be the same size as everybody else. There was going to be no height advantage, and it didn't help. So, yeah, these guys were real gentlemen. They could see we were completely outmatched. They knew that from the beginning, in fact, somebody asked me, well, did anybody flip over? And the answer to that is yes. One of the guys from, I don't know if it was Vegas or Phoenix, but it's amazing what he did. Nobody comes over to right the ship, if you will. He just, I don't know how he did it, but he kind of leans forward and flips back, and boom, the chair is back up, ready to go. So, and he does it just like that. I would have been like a turtle, and somebody would have had to come over and turn me over. But they don't. They just, that's no big deal. You fall over, they're just back. They know how to flip that thing and get moving again. So, so with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. For all the winter visitors that are here, welcome back.
A plug for the Shrine Circus last night. That was a great circus.
Was it?
It was a lot of fun.
Oh, good.
I'm glad you guys still have them. I mean, that the Shrine Club still brings them in, because we need to keep that circuses alive. Kids absolutely love those, and it's probably the only place kids are going to get to see those animals or ride them, as the case was. And it was absolutely great for them. And of course, those animals, I wish my neighbor's animals were cared for as well as they are.
Well, and the Shriners is a great organization with what they do with their 22 children's hospitals. I'm privileged and honored every year to attend one of their dinners, because when they come for London Bridge Days parade, they always invite me to the dinner. And you can, and Eileen goes with me as well, and you can see the passion they have for the children. In fact, they usually bring a child on stage that's gone through the various stages at the hospital this year, and she sang along with some others. But you can see that they have a huge passion for those kids. And it's interesting, my barber told me the other day that he was a Shriner child, and what he said was that, and this would have been decades ago, but he said that if it wasn't for them, he would never have been able to walk, because his parents could not afford to go to, but he says you go to the Shriners Hospital, and his dad didn't pay one nickel. So it's amazing.
back in the days when polio was such a disaster, the Shriners Hospitals were probably responsible for saving at least 20% of the kids that went through polio.
Sure.
It's amazing what they can do in their dedication.
Yep, absolutely. And Rotary International has done a great job with polio
Yeah.
too, trying to get rid of it. So, other questions?
I think Chuck had his hand up.
Oh, Chuck, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
That's a surprise.
First thing is, if anybody can have that video broadcast on Channel 4, that'd be great.
Okay, Chuck, you're done for the day.
Second thing is, if you're gonna play basketball again, can we request donkey basketball? I think that'd be just as hilarious. The third thing is most of us know Charlie and you for many years, that Charlie's gonna be hard to replace.
Agreed.
And that the candidates, I remember you mentioning something about some of the candidates that were interested were part of the ABC cities in that, or any of the
Oh, there was,
candidates.
actually, the gentleman that I was referring to apparently did not apply after all.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. Or if he did, he was part of the 58 that got cut, but I doubt that was I doubt that really occurred. I'm assuming he never applied. So none of them were part of the ABC teams
Okay.
that we interviewed.
And is our trash cans still on for the first of the year?
In January, not January 1, but I understand about the end of January. They're still trying to get them all here, along with the trucks. Because that's the problem, you need both for this to work. So,
Yeah, they've asked if the city has a place where they can do their staging. Because, bringing in 30,000 trash cans and everything that goes along with it, they need space to stage all that stuff and to go through the logistics of getting those cans out to the people and at a time that's convenient for the citizens and all of that. So we're working with them, and it's likely they're going to stage down at our operations yard down off London Bridge Road. So that's the latest on that. So as far as I know, we're still on track for the trash cans to come around the first of the year.
yes, sir.
Was there an option for the smaller ones instead of all just big ones?
There's an option for a 65-gallon one.
So there is the option for the.
Right, but they're asking everybody to try the 96 because I think what you're going to find, there's hardly a difference. If we've got them both at City Hall, so people can look at them and feel them, and most people go, I can't really tell a difference.
Right. Well, I hardly put trash out every week anyway, then my recyclables are so small. And also I have a 300-foot driveway that's like this.
Right, well, I have a tall driveway, but when it comes to recycling, so just don't put it out every week.
Right.
I mean,
You'll have the capacity to
let it store, and because most of the recyclables aren't going to put off a bad odor or anything, so.
Are they able to put cardboard boxes in there
Yes.
now?
Yes.
Right, but I mean.
Yeah, that was a change, yeah,
Because they don't accept that now.
correct. Although we have recycling centers, ones at City Hall, that you can do
Right,
that.
right, but I mean.
Yeah,
if you
but-
have a
but-
box that's corrugated, they don't want it in their recycling.
now you'll
Correct.
be able to put it at the curb, yes.
Yeah, because all of that then they take and ship it to their large facility in Las Vegas. One of the largest in the United States, if I recall correctly.
World.
So,
Good.
anyone else? What-
One
Jim,
more.
sure.
I was watching the Senate hearings yesterday on the Equifax disaster. One of the suggestions that came up, and you mentioned this during the last mayor's coffee, that people should check it.
Right.
See if they were victimized by this thing. But one of the suggestions the senators made to them was, would it be feasible for us to be able to deny firms like Equifax and the other two credit reporting services the right to have our personal information that we would be deleted from their databanks if necessary. And their response was, well, you can lock your file.
Right.
But that does, if the file's locked, that doesn't mean it can't be accessed by someone nefarious. Is that something from your professional perspective that would make sense?
To have your information removed.
Deleted, yes.
But my guess is that then if you ever apply for credit, nobody can check your credit because it's been deleted. And so you'll be denied the credit. And they are right, you can lock your credit, and basically by locking your credit, as I understand it, sure, people could access your info, but if your credit's locked, nobody can get new credit on your name. And then what you can do is that if you know you're going to buy a house or a car or whatever, you can go in, unlock it for a short period of time, and relock it. So I have been intending to lock my credit, and I keep forgetting, but
That's good to know.
yeah, because as I mentioned before, I was one of the ones impacted, and and I signed up for their Trust ID service or whatever it is. I don't.
If you sign up for one, Mark, does it apply to the other two, or would you have to go to them individually?
I would assume you'd have to go to them individually. The thing that this Trust ID pretty much does is alert you of any changes to your credit file. For instance, and I found this kind of weird. They alerted me just recently of an address change, but that was a house I bought 2 years ago. So might be a little slow. Yeah. But to be honest, it's funny because I find that my credit card company probably does one of the better jobs of alerting me of something that's occurring. For instance, we're going to London in May for the Freedom of the City honor and meeting the Lord Mayor of London. And the first time I tried to buy those airline tickets, I was denied. And I got a little alert, check with your company. So what I did was I went to my other email first, and there was an alert that says, is this really you, and would you like to proceed with this transaction? I said yes, went back to the other screen and was able to complete the purchase of the airline tickets. But I'll tell you what, identity theft can be horrendous because it takes years and years and years to get that cleared, and then ruins your credit in the meantime. Yes?
I was wondering about the parking on McCullough. I was maybe told that, or heard that it needed to go back to all parallel parking. I felt it might be safer because I can't see people backing out.
Right.
And I can't park there because I can never see them.
Right.
Now that we got extra parking too behind it.
Yeah, we have extra parking that there. By the way, that is scalable so that if we wanted to, if we started getting short on parking, we can actually go up. So that's the way it was designed. The answer to your question is we are likely to remove the diagonal parking as part of the repaving of McCulloch Boulevard that's going to be occurring in the next year or two, probably 2 or 3 years. And also because we would like to move the sidewalks out further. Then parallel parking is pretty much what you're left with. We want to move all those sidewalks out a little bit further because so many of our merchants downtown would like to have that as patio space for coffee, dining, whatever it is. And so we're trying to accommodate that the best we can. It'd still be a 2-lane road, but it would be shared with bicyclists and that sort of thing. We've got actually some designs that we've tentatively approved. We would also pretty much change all the trees down there to provide additional shading. The palm trees all look great, but they're high water users and don't provide much in the way of shade. So we're trying to just make it a much better corridor. But yes, the diagonal parking would likely disappear.
And those renderings for that redesign project downtown, they're in the lobby at City Hall. If you're interested in taking a look at them,
Yeah.
they're displayed there.
Chuck?
Are they gonna continue with those bump outs where the crosswalks are, you ever come out farther?
No.
They're gonna stop that.
Yeah, because the way the sidewalks are going to narrow that street to begin with. And really, the purpose of those bump outs was to narrow it in certain areas to get people to slow down, because the more narrow a road is, the slower they go. So, but with this new design, that kind of comes with the territory. It'll be narrow, and so people will go slower. I'll be honest with you, yeah, I do know that, late at night or whatever, people are barreling down that road. But during the day, if you can get up to 20 miles an hour, that's a miracle. So a lot of times now I take Mesquite or Swanson. Yes, sir.
Yes, I don't know if this really applies to anything that we are here for, but the other day I was running on the water, and the lake is beginning to bloom with green algae really bad.
Yep.
And that is probably going to end up on all the beaches. Where's this coming from? Do you know, or?
Yes and no. We do know it's naturally occurring. It just happens at different times a year. We get more of it than other times. As 99.9% of it is not toxic. And the only thing we tell people is that if you see it in a cove, just don't swim in it. But more importantly, don't let your pets swim in it, because it can make your pets sick. Why does it make them sick and maybe not adults? Because your pets get it all over their coat and they lick it off. We're bright enough, or at least most of us are, not to go in and start drinking that water with the green stuff. We have an organization that's been in existence since 1997. It's called the Clean Colorado River Sustainability Coalition. I'm the chairman of that and have been for the last 11 years. We have every major water agency in the West that are members of that organization. And one of the things we monitor for water quality is the green slime, so to speak, because they get it in all the various lakes. And we also test to see if there's any toxicity, because there's kind of the good green algae and the bad green algae, and we're always testing microcystis. We're always testing for it. And as I said, the vast majority, it's non-toxic. It's just ugly to look at, and you don't want to swim in it. But it can make your pets sick because they're just consuming it.
As the mayor said, it is naturally occurring and likely cyclical. In that, we'll have years where we don't see much of it at all, and then we'll have years where it's very noticeable. And it is likely the cause, or the result, I should say, of the presence of quagga mussel. Since the quagga mussel has become prevalent in our waters, they're filter feeders, and they actually clarify the water. And when the water is clearer, the sunlight can penetrate deeper into the water column and generate this algae that you're seeing at greater depths than it might have been able to previously. So that's a theory, and it's likely that is the case, because that's what has occurred in the east, where the zebra and the quagga mussels have set up housekeeping, so to speak. So
there's no way to control it, I mean.
No. I wish there was. All we can do is monitor it. And Charlie's correct that it's likely caused by the quagga, and that's another pest in our lake, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it. There are chemicals and naturally occurring ingredients that you can use that can kill the quagga, but it only works in a closed system. And we're nothing more than a wide spot along the river. So, in fact, I think Doyle Wilson, one of our employees at the city, Dr. Wilson, said that ours flows so rapidly, the entire lake can change over in 18 days. So, so what we do as part of this Clean Colorado group, we actually call it Crisco for short. We monitor that. We take water quality samples. Those are housed at the Southern Nevada Water Authority website. We're going to be starting a project where we're going to do some analysis, historical analysis of the samples that we've taken. And we're also starting a project right now of mapping the lake, underneath the lake, because we are seeing changes in the lake, and we don't know if that is caused from a quagga, man-made, or natural maturation of a lake. Because if you think about it, our lake's only 80 years old. So it's not a real old lake. Hal?
Mark, yesterday at our Kiwanis meeting, Brianna Morgan from the city.
Yeah.
By the way, side note, she's a product of our high school, and she was in the first day as she graduating class
Yes.
here at Havasu. So very, very nice young lady. Did a program on water conservation.
Yes.
She talked about Crisco and then some things within the city. And she talked about the droughts in its 17th year in the area, and it could reach a point where it'd be mandated, water conservation could be mandated.
Correct.
How would the city enforce something like that? It was mandated that someone had to reduce their water use.
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, when it comes to conservation, she probably indicated that there's several stages. The initial stage would occur when Lake Mead gets to, in January, I believe, a level of 1,075.
In October.
Is it October?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what they, if it was below that, they would mandate a conservation effort of 20% of your allocation. We're very fortunate. We're only using half of our allocation, so for us that would be what they call a paper shortage. For people like CAP, MWD, etc., they're going to have to conserve because they're pretty much using all their allocation. We are not. When the second stage, now they take and they start conserving or making you conserve based on actual usage. And we have ordinances in place to
There's 4 stages.
yeah, well, there's 4 stages, yes, but we have ordinances in place for that when it comes to an actual water shortage that we can implement. Let's face it, conservation in many cases is going to be based on the honor system because we can't pound on your door or whatever. But if we see water, but we'll be able to enforce things if we see water running down the street or whatever. When I was living in San Jose years and years ago, they had a water shortage, and they told us what days you could water your lawn and all kinds of other things. And if you were caught doing something like that, the fines were pretty severe. We're hopeful that through continued education, we're not going to see that problem. Now, years from now, when we get to build out at 96,000 people, we'll be using all of our water allocation. So if they do hit that 1,075 mark, we'll be one of the ones that we'll have to conserve. The other kind of bad news about the whole thing, there's various priorities of water. First priority is the best you can get. We don't have that. We have 4th priority, so we're one of the ones that have to conserve first. You bet. Other Jim?
Police department's carrying the anti-opiate medication now. Is that an indication that our situation is severe enough that that's now necessary?
I would say our situation is not unlike any other community across America. It is a crisis. There is no doubt about it. But we want to carry it because it saves lives. And, you know, if we never use it, we're prepared to use it. So, you know, opioids are, for any of you who have used them as a painkiller because you had a surgery or whatever, you know that they're highly addictive. I used them for about 3 days, I think it was, when I had rotator cuff, and I could not believe the impact, and I just threw them away. I said, I'm done, can't take them. So, but our situation really isn't, I would say the crisis is probably worse in big cities versus us, but that doesn't mean we don't have people on opioids that overdose or whatever, and so we're prepared to save their life.
And it's not just the, you know, the junkies and the abusers that are the real concern, as much as the exposure by the police officers themselves. This drug fentanyl is so insidious that, you know, just the slightest contact can be fatal. And of course that applies to the officers who could be exposed to that as a part of doing their regular duties. So carrying the naloxone is not only a benefit to the people that they might run across that need it, but also for the officers themselves should they come into inadvertent contact with something as crazy as fentanyl.
Yes, sir.
I see a lot of private company trucks filling water from our water mains. Is that legal?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah, they pay for that.
Do they?
Yeah, they take out a meter. There's a meter that's made for that purpose. And what you may be seeing is the street sweeping company that we've hired to come in and sweep the community. So yeah, they're issued meters that actually go on the hydrant. It's a 2.5 or 4-inch meter. So if you ever see one that's taking water without one of those meters, and they're pretty easy to spot, yeah, please let us know, because that is theft.
Yeah. And they used, you probably saw some of them for Cypress Park too, because any major construction area, they got to keep it moist.
I've seen 2 or 3 of the pest control, you know, with the big tanks filling those up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, next time, look at where they connect, and if you don't see an obvious meter there, yes, please let us know. We definitely want to know about that. But obviously, if they want to continue doing business in the city, as Doug can attribute, you don't take water without a meter. That's taboo.
Other questions?
Did the fire department, did they no longer use that shot that when someone, I found Chuck a couple weeks ago in a diabetic coma, and his insulin, his blood sugar was down to 26, so I called the paramedics and fire department, and instead of giving him that shot, they hooked him up to the IV, to the glucose. And that brought him out slowly, not as fast as what the shot did back in 2010, because that was the last time he had that incident. So do they no longer use that?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I'm sorry, I don't have the answer either. You know, our paramedics are all certified. I'm sure they made an assessment and made the decision that they made based on their experience and training. So I can't sit here and judge why they might have done one thing.
We can ask whether or not they use those shots, but I honestly don't know the answer.
Yeah,
to that.
because the shot brought him back up to like 380 something, whereas the bag of the glucose, it only brought him up to 186, which was good, but it took a while for him to, be coherent.
Right.
And I'd like to thank the fire department
Yes.
for saving my life, basically, from the Thunderbolt station. They did a very professional job.
Good. Other question? Yes.
Just to add on what you said, Dr. Davis at ASU, and probably where this young lady went to school, she went to Dr. Davis's program, they're studying the lake, and the students are out there once in a while doing a call, muscle and study, and they get credit for that.
Yeah, they do. And we're, the Crisco organization oftentimes uses ASU students as well whenever we can for credits for their studies or whatever. And we're going to try to use some of them for the mapping of the lake. The mapping of the lake will take time. Basically what happens is that you have to get a boat, and the Marine Association is actually volunteering their boat, and then we went out and we're buying equipment. The equipment runs between 10 and 15,000 that gets attached to the boat and begins and I don't know all the
Bathymetric survey.
Yeah, bathymetric survey, great. And yeah, is that because it's in a bathtub or? And so anyway, they go out, but it takes a long, long time, and you just kind of sit on the boat and let it do its thing. But then we'll be analyzing all of that. We'll actually release most of that information to the public if they wish to have it. What we won't release is the location of any tribal artifacts, because we know there's some down there. So we will provide that to the Chemehuevi Indian tribe and to them only, out of respect for their heritage.
Mark, how is the city and the new owners of the golf course making out? They're just doing a ton of work up there, boy.
Yeah, they are. And one of the things that has helped them in terms of growing grass and that sort of thing is that they asked us whether or not they could access the what we call the south intake valve, where you bring water straight off the lake pretty much. They have to pay for that. But they use that now during overseeding. They're going to try to do it 2 or 3 times a year, where they can basically flood, if you will, that's a lousy word to use, but flood the lawn areas, because when you're using effluent, which is what they use pretty much all the rest of the year, all that reclaimed water, it has a lot of salts in it, and we know that. Why does it have a lot of salt in it? Because everyone's using a water softener that uses salt, and to get that out is incredibly expensive. So what happens is that salt starts to sit at the root level, and then it makes it hard for the grass to grow. But most of it, if you kind of flush it with regular water, it drops all that salt down, and then the grass is able to grow better. We made an agreement that they can do that 2 or 3 times a year until such time, it could be 20, 25 years from now, until such time that water is needed for residential use. So, but that'll give them a couple of decades at least. So yeah, we're happy with the improvements. They're doing a lot of hard work, and we're all looking forward to what they can produce. Because golf is really important not only to the residents, but our winter visitors would like to stay in Havasu to use the golf courses as opposed to go to neighboring communities.
And getting back to the lake water quality topic, you heard the mayor earlier talk about the statements of qualifications that we're reviewing for consultants to help us on the design of the Eco-Environmental Learning Center. And the Learning Center is going to have a focus on water quality. And in fact, we're going to be relocating the city's current state-certified water quality laboratory, which you probably didn't even know we had, which is at the Mulberry Treatment Plant now. We're going to be relocating that lab to the Learning Center and actually putting it behind a glass wall where folks who come to the Learning Center or classroom students as part of an outing can come in and actually see a working water quality laboratory on the other side of the wall, and it will actually incorporate that into the learning curriculum that will be part of the center. But also that lab will also contain equipment and devices that will be available for other entities or jurisdictions that have an interest in the water quality in the river and in the lake can come in and use that equipment to do their research, or college students to do the research necessary for a paper or whatever, to be able to come in and gather their samples on the lake and then come in and have an actual laboratory tool available to them to get that data, gather that data. And we will use that facility as a clearinghouse for all of the water quality data that we can find, or that we can gather, or that we can create. And so in the interest of Lake Havasu City becoming the subject matter expert, so to speak, on all things water quality in Lake Havasu or along the Colorado River. Because the more we learn through Crisco and other entities, the more we learn about the water quality in the lake, the more we realize how little we really know about the water quality in the lake, and how the circulation patterns take place during certain times of the year, and the temperatures in the various water column, and how the water in the lake behaves. You know, for years we've been squabbling over the quantity of water that's in the Colorado River, and who gets what and where are you going to divert it, and who's taking too much, and all of that. But very little, or not enough, I should say, attention has been paid to the actual quality of that water that's in the river. So that's going to be the focus of that Eco-Environmental Learning Center. And we'll actually have a small water reclamation demonstration plant that will be built into the design of that facility as well. So folks can come in and actually see the water treatment process and how it works. And the water that it generates will actually be used to irrigate the landscaping and the botanical garden that is planned as a part of that facility. So water quality is going to be the focus of that whole project.
Speaking of water quantity, yes, all the various municipalities, farmers, etc., do squabble over who gets what water, and in fact we're experiencing that today. Monday I'm going to Bullhead City to speak in front of the Arizona Department of Water Resources to oppose a water transfer from the Colorado River to central Arizona. There's now been multiple attempts. This one is Quartzsite would like to transfer 1,070 acre feet to central Arizona. And then there are farmers, and I shouldn't even say farmers because they're not. There are investment companies who bought farmland up in the Mojave Valley who now want to transfer their water allocation to central Arizona. Basically, they'd be getting $34 million for what, about $400,000 worth of land?
Right.
And so we're opposing that. Back in the day, when all the agreements were made, and I'm not going to pretend I'm a water expert here, a water law expert, but basically about 164,000 acre feet was reserved for Colorado River communities to use over a period of time. So we are opposing any transfer of that 160. We don't care who the parties are. This isn't about CAP, it isn't about Quartzsite or the investment companies. We're just saying any transfer to central Arizona does nothing but harm the future of rural Arizona. It's that simple. We cannot grow, we cannot have industry, tourism, etc., if we don't have water available to us. So, I know Quartzsite needs the money, so to speak, but there are alternatives. Sell it to the Mojave County Water Authority. Now, what they're doing is what they call a lease, which we find interesting. It's a 25-year lease with a 25-year option. I know the Mojave County Water Authority said we'd like to buy it, but Quartzsite wants to do a lease. Well, we're opposed to a long-term lease because number one, if your local citizens are using that water and the lease expires, what do? Well, I know what happens. The owner of that water goes, well, it was a lease. And I know we only charged you $1.8 million back in the day, but now it's worth $40 million. Pay up or shut up. And so we believe that if they're not going to use that water, then it should go back in the pool that's available to other river communities. And you know, the farms up in Mojave Valley, it's my understanding that these are LLCs from back east somewhere that literally bought this farmland. They plan to fallow the land and just sell off the water. And, you know, again, that's just transferring, and this is some of its first priority water. So, that, and, you know, in my part of my comments on Monday would indicate to the Arizona Department of Water Resources that, can you imagine the outcry of those in Phoenix and Tucson if we went to their area and said, we're taking your water? We'd never hear the end of it. Well, that's what they're doing to us. And so we're hopeful that Arizona Department of Water Resources will deny the transfer. They have a policy to deny the transfer of that water, and we're hoping they uphold their policy. Jim?
Speaking of battles, was there a resolution to the county sweeping our flood control money?
Yeah, there was. They didn't do it. We spoke to them at length, and it was pretty clear that there wasn't support at the supervisor level. We were told later, well, it was just kind of a passing thought. Well, we made sure it was a passing thought. So no, they did not sweep it, and so we're good to go in that area. And
The threat is still there.
the threat is always there, but you know, we're protective. You know, we you know what, the long and the short of it is, if you look at the assessed value in Mojave County, all of Mojave County, we're 38% of it. So, and we don't get 38% of the flood control monies. So, you know, we're still a provider of that, and we're good with that. Because, you know, what it used to be was we used to get hardly anything because they kept it. You know, we reminded them that, you know, it's really our money. And if we had a mechanism to collect it ourselves, we probably would. But we don't. Because it's on the property tax bill. Chuck?
Does Crisco cover all the way up to Lake Powell? Because I've heard our neighbors from Wyoming, and they go up to Powell a lot, and
Right.
they said that Powell is really coming up because of the last couple of seasons of rain. And have you heard anything about that?
I haven't. I'm not surprised that it's come up. Crisco goes from basically Lake Mead, all the way down to just shy of Yuma. We're actually putting together a watershed management plan, and it goes from Hoover Dam to just short of going into Yuma. We're actually looking for new members to our organization. In fact, I met with the Yuma mayor just the other night, and we're hopeful he'll become a member. Crisco has always been known as Crisco, but the name did change. Years ago, instead of Clean Colorado River Sustainability Coalition, it was the Colorado River Regional Sewer Coalition. And we did that. The focus is the same, water quality, but we did that because that was when Bullhead City and Lake Havasu City were being told by the federal government and the state government, you'll be putting in a sewer or else. And so what we were doing was trying to lobby our federal government for some assistance. We, quite frankly, did not get much in the way of assistance at all. We did get a little. Lake Havasu City received, out of a $350 million project, we received about $4 million. And that was squeezing everybody as hard as we could. We did get an $8 million grant for water. So, in the end, once those projects were done, the members of Crisco, and again, we have Metropolitan Water District, CAP, Southern Nevada Water Authority, Mojave County, various regional sewer coalitions, ourselves, Bullhead City, Needles, a lot of the major communities along the river. We didn't want to just stop because we felt that nobody was really focusing on water quality. So we changed the name and we continue. We're very well funded because this organization charges dues to its members. I think ours is $4,000 a year, if I remember right. It's either $2,000 or $4,000 a year. And it's so that we have a pool of money that we can access for water quality projects. The watershed management plan that we're doing right now, that's actually through a grant with the Bureau of Reclamation. They're paying virtually all of that. So it's worked out, and the various water agencies have been excellent members for us, especially Metropolitan Water District and Southern Nevada Water Authority. They actually send a scientist, Southern Nevada Water Authority, to look at the green slime and take samples and report on it to us every quarter. So it's been a great relationship.
The mapping study is also Crisco funded.
The mapping study is Crisco funded, absolutely. Other questions?
I have one.
Sure.
About the stormwater runoff, retention pond.
Yes.
Looking at the one on Horizon 6, very large project up there. And it appears to me that the way those are designed, none of the water will enter the river system that runs off from that area. They just end up being large evaporating ponds. And I think if they continue with those ponds all over to control runoff, and the runoff doesn't make it to the river, so you don't lose it.
It does seem to be contrary to what the Army Corps of Engineers wants versus, what is it, the state, which federal or state agency requiring this? Is it ADEQ, I think?
Well, the EPA has, there's a national stormwater program, which is what we're all having to deal with. That's actually the driving force behind all of the retention that you're seeing. If you're retaining the water and it's just evaporating or soaking into the ground and never makes it to the river, then what does that do to the tributary effect of the Colorado River? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
but
destroying the watershed.
Yeah, well, the federal government is all-knowing and all-seeing, so I'm sure they have a good answer for you.
I know their motive that I can see is to keep the silt out of the river.
Probably.
But there's so very small amount of silt.
Right.
It's deposited along the bed mainly.
Well, and you see, you see it on a much smaller scale all over town too, as well. And I know your plant has been subject to some enforcement as well. Like the Calvary Church down on Sweetwater, you see a good portion of the property where that church is a retention basin. The hotel that's going up down in the English Village. I was telling the mayor yesterday, the retention a vessel that they buried in the ground out there is just absolutely huge. It's bigger than this room. So it does, I'm sure, have a beneficial effect to the runoff and the pollutants that get carried with that first flush runoff in a rainstorm. But in a community like ours, it seems like overkill because we get so little rain that it seems like, to me personally, the engineer in me doesn't really like that, but there isn't much that we can do about it because it is a federal mandate.
And it does seem contrary, so you got the EPA wanting one thing, but the Army Corps of Engineers, whenever we try to use, as you know, whenever you're grading and you're near a wash, they want you to protect those washes so the water gets down to the river, and it's like, well, which one do you want?
Well, I was up at Lake Mead where the San Juan River dumps into Lake Mead. It's very dirty, nasty looking water in the San Juan River. But within 100 yards of hitting Lake Mead, the mud was settled.
Right.
Right.
Well, a lot of folks aren't aware of
Right there where it went into the river.
the reason why Lake Havasu itself, the lake, exists. It was to create a clear water pumping pool, a desilting basin for the Whitsett pumping plant, which is on the California side where the silver pipes go up the side of the mountain. And Parker Dam, the generating capacity of Parker Dam was designed to provide the electricity to run those pumps to get. So recreation and other uses of Lake Havasu water is about 7 or 8 down on the list of priorities. It's
Right. Other questions? No one?
Dot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that hotel down along the channel still a thing?
Oh, yeah, if you go down there now,
I walk it every week.
yeah, you
3 days a week.
you can see them grading. It's below the statues of C.V. Wood and McCulloch. If you look down, you will see all the construction taking place in that area. They're putting in that.
Yeah, that's in now. The retention
basin
is in. In fact, they're putting sticks up now. The foundation is in, and it's actually beginning to go vertical now. So
Just where all those big boulders are, that's something to do with it.
oh, you're talking about the Hilton site.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that's still viable as a hotel site, and there will be a hotel there one day, as well as a restaurant and commercial and other uses. But for right now,
The other side.
the Holiday Inn Express and Suites is going in first, but there is still that set aside. That property is still set aside, and the plans are still in place for that Hilton Homewood Suites.
Right. Yeah, and for those of you who do go down to the channel, you'll notice that all the cement got pulled up, and it's now all pavers, new landscaping, benches, trees, lighting, and we're now in the process of removing all those old chains and bollards and replacing them. So the improvements will be substantial, and Doc, what they will eventually do in terms of the Homewood Suites, they want to see what kind of results they get from this first hotel, and then they'll probably partner with somebody else to put in the second one. They hope to be open late June, early July for that hotel. I know they're going to do well. There's no doubt, because we need additional hotel rooms, and they have just done an incredible amount of work in the village area itself, and rightfully so. They want their customers to have a good experience. So, yeah, so do we. Yeah, exactly. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
You know, if you're ready to end the meeting, I would like to interject something. I moved here 7 years ago as a snowbird. We made time in Florida, which was a mistake because we spent 10 years retired in Florida. We came here and we bought within 2 weeks. And the reason we bought is because of people like you guys. You know, we're so impressed with the town, and the other, of course, is just the people we met. They're really, really, truly nice.
Yes.
And I want to thank you, because every time we stay about 8 months here and move out for 4 months to stay cool. But anyhow.
Wait, does it get warm here?
Hadn't noticed.
We're basically from Michigan, where we have a small business here, so we have to, you know, establish some type of a residency or some type of a showing. But we'd love to be here year round, and we'd probably put up with the heat just to be in this area because it's beautiful. But it's because of people like you that made me so impressed. You know, and every year we come back, I take a look, what's being done? What improvements did you guys make? And every year there's something new, something beautiful, something that, wow, what a great place to live. You know, unfortunately we bring friends here that come to visit us, and they said, truly, this is the land of paradise. And we say, keep away, we don't want to visit with you. You know, so, but anyhow, I want to thank you personally.
Well, thank you very much.
For doing what you're doing. And if ever possible, could you put out a suggestion box somewhere? You know, I spend some time in Alaska, and in Ketchikan, Alaska, has this rail system. It goes all the way to the top of the mountain, so you can see the ocean, you can see the town and stuff like this. Would there be ever a possibility to put something like that at Sarah Park?
A rail?
Just like they have for the ski runs where you know, charge $5 and let the person see how beautiful this area is, the mountains. Because majority of us are too weak to climb a mountain.
Right, yeah.
Even though we think sometimes we can, I tried, well, I got about 10 feet. So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because yesterday I think I told you that we were looking at some preliminary plans for the downtown area, and one of them, they called it a tech tower, and it literally went up and it allowed people to go to the top of this little tower to be able to view all of Lake Havasu and surrounding areas. So, so if somebody else is thinking kind of in the same way you are as well. You know, you mentioned, I'm going to tell you just a quick funny story. Years ago, I had to go to Ketchikan for business. It was 1977, and I don't know what it's like today because it's been so long. But back then, you had to get on this little airplane, and you flew onto an island, and it came to a screeching halt. Then you boarded a bus that got onto a little ferry and went over to the mainland. And I'll never forget this. So get on this bus, and it kind of smelled like,
Fish.
No, alcohol.
Oh, were you in Metlakatla?
Yeah, so the bus driver, it's 10 in the morning, is already feeling pretty good. So we get on this bus and we go over there, and the tide was low, so the ramp to get to the mainland's like this. So he's like, gets to barely the top and makes it. And one of the guys says, goodness gracious, what do you do when there's snow on this thing? And he says in kind of his crusty old voice, he says, sometimes I gotta hit this damn thing 2 or 3 times. And if we thought he was drunk at 10 a.m. when we had to leave at 4 p.m., oh my goodness. We thought, could somebody else drive? So, but that's what I remember about Ketchikan.
Now, we landed probably in Metlakatla, which is the only Indian reservation in Alaska.
Oh, okay.
And their main problem, like we could have opiate problems here, their main problem is alcohol.
Okay.
They can't keep it up.
Yeah.
If I may, and to your point about progress and coming back and seeing new things and great things happening, I share your sentiment about this mayor. This man has been responsible for more good things in this community than you can shake a stick at, and he will leave a legacy. He's not going to run again next year, so we're going to lose him as mayor. But hopefully you all will replace him with another great mayor.
Right.
And we can continue this tradition of doing great things. And there's one of the things that you'll be very pleasantly surprised when it is revealed is that Havasu Riviera project. It's hidden behind a big dirt berm right now, but as the mayor said, there's grading activity taking place down there. You probably see the dust cloud from time to time. The roadway base is in. Once that berm does come down, and that, yes, there will be a traffic light there. There will be another intersection on the highway, but venturing onto that site, you'll be so pleasantly amazed at just how spectacular that property is. And right at the top of it is going to be that environmental learning center that I was talking about earlier. And it will be designed to capture the most spectacular views that are available in this community. Not just 180-degree views, 360-degree views, because you'll not only have a view of the whole river valley all the way from Copper Canyon to Spirit Mountain to the north, but you can turn around and actually see most of the entire community itself. So the views there are going to be spectacular, and that environmental learning center is going to be a public place that will be someplace, and the botanical gardens will be an extra amenity. But it will be a place that's just going to be a neat place to just sit down and just soak up this entire picturesque piece of the desert. So,
Is there a completion date on this?
well, like, you know, we're in the process. It's a public-private partnership with State Park. Arizona State Parks is involved because there's a public boat launch and marina facility at the end down by the water. There's a private developer, Comic Enterprises, which is going to build out a 250-acre piece with residential and some mixed uses and a hotel site and some commercial. And then there's the city's piece, which is a 280-acre parcel that's going to be public use, which is, there's a golf course on the master plan, which may occur someday. We haven't funded that yet, but it's been set aside for that. But there's also going to be public uses, like the environmental learning center, like the botanical garden, as well as a day use area for hiking, and there'll also be, there's two very large kind of benched out areas that actually were created with the earth that was taken out of the roadway when the roadway base was put in. And so there's two very nice, big, large benches out there that are kind of set aside for just future use, you know, maybe parking or some joint use with the commercial that's going to be on the other side of the street. But we were looking at it from an event venue standpoint and realized that, you know what, if we just grassed in these benches here, this would make a beautiful spot for a concert or a hot rod car show, or just, you know, another event venue to complement Windsor 4 at State Park and other places where we have these events. And they've gotten so big that they've outgrown a lot of the venues that we have, the Balloon Fest and things like that. So we're looking at that property from that perspective as well. So it's really going to be a cool project. You're going to love it when you're able to access it.
You will have residential sites.
Yes.
How many do you estimate?
I think
600?
I think it's a little less than that. I want to say 400 to 500 residential sites. This is private property that's been private property for decades.
Yeah. They're still master planning that site.
Yeah, and they're hoping to do trails, and they're trying to work with the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, right now in terms of trails. It's what they're really trying to work out is the trails are not a big issue. It's access, because it will be a gated community. So they're trying to figure out how do they make all that work and have trails along the lake and river. The launch ramp piece and marina, it will open next year. That will be open hopefully sometime in May, maybe June. They're trying to get it open in time for some of the big events like Desert Storm. So they want that open. That is the Arizona State Parks piece, but it's a little bit different than the typical Arizona State Park. This, the private developer doing the residential is actually constructing the Arizona State Park at a pretty high cost. So in return, they get a 40-year concession to run that park, and then they pay Arizona State Parks so much a year, etc. And it is a long concession, 40 years, but that's what it takes to get their money back on such a huge investment that they're making. So they're motivated to get that done because they know that's going to be a big draw for the residential community and the new hotel that will be down in that area. So lots of good things happening. Yes?
Charlie, I know you did a lot of work on 280, Havasu 280 Riviera. What project, now that you're leaving, do you think that you wish you would have got done during your time here? You had Site 6 was off, but was there anything that sticks in your mind that you think, oh, I wish I could have got done?
Well, first of all, the pinnacle of my career actually was the creation of the pickleball courts. Just saying. So, thank you for keeping the pressure on me on that one. We finally got that one. You mentioned Site 6, and frankly, I was so hopeful that we could take that building that's out there at Site 6 and make something cool out of it, because that's Lake Havasu City's first building. That's the very first structure that Robert McCulloch constructed when he came here to set up his outboard motor test facility. That was the outboard motor test facility. And it has such a cool history that I've always thought that it would be neat to kind of resurrect that building, maybe not restore it, because it never really was a pretty building, but to resurrect it and use that shell as the basis for something very cool. And we came up with some concept renderings of what it might be, but it also came with about a $3 million price tag. It was really difficult to justify because, well, just because it was $3 million to make an old building cool. And that's a tough sell when you're talking about taxpayer dollars. So it's still my hope that at some point in the future, Site 6 will be something cool. And what we had was basically the areas down below that are just storage now. We had it set up where there would be a kind of an indoor-outdoor bar at one end, a small convenience store, like a fishing bait shop kind of a concept down below to support the boating. And then the upper story, where those kind of hotel room looking things are now, would be open meeting space that would just be open, that you could divide off and have meetings or a wedding or whatever the case might be on that floor, and then have a party deck up on top with shade cloth and a spot where you could where you could have an event or a band or a dance or whatever. Those plans, they're not really plans, they're just concepts. They still exist. They're in my desk drawer, and somebody will pull them out one day and say, this is cool, we need to do that. And I'd really like to see that, because that's the kind of place where I'd like to hang out in my retirement.
I was there the other day, and a store would have been nice to be able to buy a bag of ice.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, or to rent an aluminum boat, and take your grandkids out fishing or whatever, and just, I think it would be a cool surprise for people to find, this neat spot, a little sandwich shop or a coffee shop and a bar, bistro, cafe, whatever. So that I've always thought would be something that I would have liked to have done while I was here. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull it off, but somebody will someday.
Yeah, I will share with you, because it's related to your question. He and I had a conversation the other day about the fact that he's leaving and what got accomplished and whatnot. And what Charlie was saying was that one of the things that he's the most proud of the team, if you will, because it was he and I and several other members of Greg was involved in this, and several other council members, Don Callahan and whatnot, but was really the refinancing of our sewer project. Because that, when it was originally built and financed, it was in financially such a mess. It had to be all redone. And yet, as we were talking about it, is hardly anybody really knew what we had to go through to make it, to get it accomplished, and the level of effort. I mean, it took us over 2 years. And we were reminiscing about the day that our bonds were finally going to be sold on the open market, and $180 million of bonds. And we were getting a call from J.P. Morgan to let us know what the status of being able to sell them for. And we're thinking, oh my goodness, if nobody wants these bonds, what the heck are we going to do? Well, he calls us up and he says, just want you to know that we have orders for $400 million of your bonds, and yet you're only selling 180. And both of us were like, well, it looks like the interest rate's going to go down a little. And that's what they did. They lowered the rate until it could balance the book, or that's what they call it. And it got all done. And so what it basically meant was that not only have we not had a sewer rate increase in the last 7 years, we're looking at somewhere between 5 and 10 more years where no rate increase is going to occur, and maybe never, because any significant growth to the north will be paid for by developers, not by our citizens. So that was a project that both he and I were very...
Yeah, he just outlined probably what I would consider the most significant accomplishment of my entire career was that restructuring, that refinancing, and the mayor jumped right to the end. But in that year and a half, 2 years in between, and Senator Borelli is nodding, because he was instrumental in helping us get legislation passed that forced a state agency, the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, to work with us and not punish us to the tune of a $15 million prepayment penalty, to allow us to do the right thing for our community. We had a hostile public agency, a state agency, that was doing everything they could to keep us from doing what we wanted to do, because it was in their financial best interest to keep us right where we were. So that it was brutal. And in the midst of all of that was an equally brutal campaign cycle that the mayor was going through to get reelected. And there was people out there making up stories and just telling fibs, and so it was phenomenal what we were able to accomplish. And just keeping our heads down and keeping our eye on the prize, and then then the finance director quit. And,
it was like, really?
It was like it was like having all these wolves coming at us from all sides. But we kept our heads down, and we persevered, and there was a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of introspect and making sure that it's like, are you sure we're doing the right thing? I mean, so talk about a partnership and a teamwork effort. That was spectacular. And as the mayor said, most of the community is not even aware that all of that was going on kind of behind the scenes, but it was, and it was probably one of the most profound things that I've ever done. It took everything I know how to do that.
Yeah, one of the interesting pieces of it is even our financial advisors, when we were battling the state, said, you're never going to get this done. You can't get this done. You're going to have to pay these penalties. We're going to model it as if you're going to pay these penalties. And we enlisted, he was Representative Borelli at the time, now Senator Borelli. We enlisted him to make this happen, and we made it happen. And when we went to the final board meeting, they were so happy to get rid of us because we had just forced their hand that you cannot charge prepayment penalties. And what was even worse is that prepayment penalty wasn't even in our contract. It was a new policy that they had set forth, and were going to tag us with $15 million just because they felt they could.
They were throwing up a wall at every turn.
We are you know, again, that's kind of, it's not a sexy project, it's none of those things you can see, but boy, did it have a financial impact on this community, a huge financial impact. Chuck, one last question.
As a longtime resident, to the gentleman from Michigan, we're full-timers and we stay cool. It's called AC. But I, for one, been coming here since the 80s. We've been coming in that. We've been full-timers since early 2001. And we really hate to see our tag team go with Charlie and Mark.
Yeah.
In that. And I hope that they will be, I know Charlie has said that he's going to stay in town, do
Yep.
some traveling and stuff. And I know Mark wants to go to Wickenburg. But I hope they stay available to our council people that take over to give advice if they're asked.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I don't think you could get a better set of politicians. You know, with the politicians that we have now, I don't think you could find any two that think more of our city and do more for our city and have always thought about our city than those two.
Thank you, Chuck.
All right, next month, December 1st, I believe, and it will be at Schlotsky's. And just as a reminder, bring all your friends, because I think what we ought to do is roast Charlie in some way. It will be his last meeting. So, I was actually thinking, I haven't told him this yet, but I was actually thinking that let him kind of reminisce about the last 16 years he's been with the community and how he started and some of the politics that were involved over the last 16 years.
Some things you don't want to hear about.
And but please bring your friends and let's send them off with a smile. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.